Hello, this is Matt with Book Brilliant. Thank you for listening today on our second episode with Jerry Sanford, author of It Started With a Helmet. Now, Jerry is a retired New York City firefighter, and Jerry has one heck of a career. I highly recommend everybody check out his book, It Started With a Helmet. And he's on all social media under the tag, It Started With a Helmet. He and Chris, his partner, we're very nice people, and they were patient people because I hate to say it, but the night before we had the interview, it stormed where I'm at pretty bad here in Nebraska, and so I had a bad internet connection, and we were having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end, which, as you can imagine, was very embarrassing. But Jerry and Chris were great, and they were patient through it, and we got through it, and we had one heck of an interview, I think. So please keep in mind, too, the books that we talk about here and this episode and any episode are going to be hyperlinked on our website and in the show notes. You go to bookbrilliant.com, you can check out the interview, you can see all of the books that we've mentioned, and any other references we made are going to be hyperlinked in the show notes. But let's get to this interview with Jerry. Jerry is a true hero and a rock star to me. All right, Jerry, thank you for being on Book Brilliant. When I was looking back, I noticed that there's a 53-year age gap between us. I'm 27 and you're 83. So
wow.
it's
A
exciting.
pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here. Meet you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. I was telling you a little bit ago, and I know that you're a humble guy, but you truly are a rock star to me. I've never met a firefighter from New York. I've never met anybody who was at ground zero during 9/11. Growing up, my childhood best friend since kindergarten, all he wanted to do was be a firefighter. And we were actually in the same second grade class when 9/11 happened. Mm-hmm. They came in and my teacher read a thing and started crying that these Twin Towers had been attacked. And I had no idea what that, was at the moment. Right. It wasn't until we went home and everything was different since then. But that same friend, he actually, he's a paramedic and a firefighter now in our hometown. And he got me to join a volunteer fire department with him that I served on for about 5 years.
Thank you. Great.
So yeah.
Well, you guys, I say this on TikTok every night, that the volunteer firefighters throughout the country fill a huge void for us, because not every municipality or little town has the ability or the money to have a paid department. And you guys, you go to work, you drop what you're doing when the alarm comes in, you race to drownings, floods, all that stuff. And my hat's off to you. I say that every night. I thank the volunteers throughout the country.
Yeah, well, they'll definitely, hear that and appreciate that, coming from somebody who served in a city like New York, to tip their hat to the rural guys and the volunteer guys.
That's right.
A lot to them.
Always.
Thank you. So, Jerry, you've got this book that just came out. It Started With the Helmet. I've read it. I liked it. I was thinking about this last night, and it was really hitting me. You watched the Twin Towers be built, and then you were there when they were destroyed. That's a heavy thing to think about.
Yes, it is. It was just, going to 23 truck up in Harlem in the 60s. And I watched them start. Watched the actual steel come out of the ground and go all the way up. And then 2001, I was changing planes in Pittsburgh. I'm jumping ahead of the story a little bit, but that's when I was called to a television, and I saw that the first plane had hit the first tower. And then about an hour and a half later, when we were in a car, because we got thrown off the plane in Pittsburgh, I heard we had the radio on, and we weren't aware that, in fact, a second plane had hit one of the towers. Shanksville plane was forced down, and of course the flight into the Pentagon. And now the radio announcer is saying that, oh my God, the tower's collapsing. And I'm in the car and I'm screaming, that can't be. I saw them built. How could that? Now he's saying minutes later, the second tower came down. So at that point, we were in West Virginia coming back here to Naples, and we stopped at a rest area and we ran in, and that's when I saw, in fact, Matt, the cloud that the whole world had seen when the two towers had collapsed, killing all those people. And yeah, it's a hard, getting back to what you said, it's very hard to understand what happened that day and how did they come down.
Yeah. I want to touch base on a lot of that later on, because you have some really powerful stories about it. But before you were a firefighter, you were a policeman, and
Yeah.
people can read the book and find out more about how you went from Wall Street to becoming a policeman to becoming a firefighter. I had this, I was just curious, you had said that you saw some things as a policeman that you didn't like. Did you ever have any run-ins with the mafia or the mob in New York?
No, no, that was a whole
Okay.
different, they had a whole different undercover squad. No, I was just a beat cop out on the street saying, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah.
Here I was, I left Wall Street. Here I was from Staten Island, which is 95% white. And here I get assigned to an all Jewish Puerto Rican precinct. I mean, you talk about cultural shock, Mac. I went from what the hell is a bagel? What the hell is, I'm not used to, it was really a strange a culture change. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, and but it taught me being a police officer. I saw some very not nice things, what we do to each other, and that wasn't in my ilk. You know what I mean? I just was not. I wasn't going to do that. And that was not my. I wasn't made out to hit people and to treat people terribly. So that was the bad taste I had in my mouth about that.
No, that's definitely understandable. You don't seem like that kind of guy. And I'll tell you what, too, I've heard a lot of cops say if they could do it again, they would have become firefighters. So you probably made the right switch, right?
I did. In my class, we must have had 25 ex-cops. And the teacher out at the Rock, he hated us. He hated ex-cops. So if everybody ran 10 laps, we did 25 laps.
Yeah.
We had all the extra homework and we did all the crap. Yeah, it's very rarely, Matt, that you had a firefighter switch over to the police department. Very rare.
Yeah, and you were my age too, and you did that, which
Yes.
I can't imagine stopping what I'm doing and trying to become a firefighter now, learning from zero. So really hats off to you for doing that. And you were in Harlem, and that was when the Harlem Burnings were going on, right? I mean, there was a lot going on.
Yes.
When you started.
Yeah, I switched over in 1968, and we call those the war years, from like 68 to 70 something. And yeah, it was, we had blackouts, and during the blackouts, there was looting and burning and, just uncomfortable things in Brooklyn and in Harlem and the Bronx. In fact, I remember, I forgot what year it was, but the Yankees were playing in the World Series. And I'll think of the announcer on TV. He's since passed away. And the camera at the ball at the Yankee Stadium panned out over center field. And you could actually see the South Bronx in flames.
Jeez.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was, yep, that was Howard Cosell. Howard Cosell. He was the announcer during the World Series, and he said, "Look at this, the Bronx is burning," and it was. I mean, it was times they were terrible. Well, it wasn't only in New York, Matt, but the unrest was throughout the country too. You know, the society was changing. In fact, I tell this story. When I got to Harlem, to Latitude 23 and Engine 80, the doors were left open. You had to run. You got on the rig and you just rolled out. And the doors were left there, your shoes and all. And that was a sanctuary, the firehouse. If you needed air in your tires, or you needed a Band-Aid, or if you were afraid of something, it was a safe haven. Firehouses all over the country. But then as society changes, you heard, oh, they came in and they robbed this and they robbed that. And then they started throwing stuff at us. And a couple of fires, I was on the aerial ladder and I had a garbage can almost hit me while I was climbing an aerial ladder. off the
Whoa.
roof of a building. Here, I'm trying to save their sorry asses, and they're throwing bricks at us and garbage can. I mean, like, that's how it changed, Matt. It was frightening. It was very frightening.
You know what? I'm glad that you told that story, because I was always under the impression that some of the firefighters that are getting attacked nowadays, I thought that was new. I mean, I've heard stories of, I think in Detroit, where people were cutting the lines to the firefighters.
Yeah.
I thought that was all new. So you're the first person to tell me that even back then you were getting attacked, maybe not attacked, but harassed.
But it wasn't a regular thing.
Yeah.
But in fact, we used to travel in convoys, believe it or not. And I even, you think about an army convoy, we would have a police car. We had 2 police cars assigned to our firehouse.
Yeah.
And if we got to run, the police car would go first, then a battalion chief, then an engine, then the ladder, and then a police car after it. And we would pass blocks on fire. And the chief would just say, keep going. And we would be selective in the fires we stopped. I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying that. I mean, that's how crazy it was, but it wasn't rare. I mean, it wasn't regularly. I just want to make sure it wasn't a thing you did every day. But I mean, to us, it was like, wow, I never saw, and I don't think society will ever go back to what we did back then.
That's good. I assume that, the cop was probably having you go to certain ones where there's, when you're limited on resources, you have to choose, where are the people at who are trapped. If you've got an abandoned building or
if it was
a
a vacant building, a block, we just kept going. I mean, let it burn.
Yeah. So, on my volunteer department, I had a guy that he was on the Omaha fire, and he's probably about your age. And he had served for a few years, and really he was just he advised us on stuff. And he told me a pretty funny story he said when he started on his department, he was really young, probably his early 20s. And he said that the firefighters, they took out a 100-foot ladder and they extended it all the way up. And they said, all right, you got to climb up. When you get to the top, you put 1 foot over and then you climb back down the other way. Now, I don't know if this is a true story, but I believed him when he told it. So he said, all right. So he climbs up the ladder, gets to the top, comes back down. He's shaking. He says the second his feet hit the ground, the firefighters looked at him and go, boy, you're the craziest son of a bitch we'd ever seen. There's no way any of us would have done that. So I believed that story when he told it to me. But yeah, man, you've done a couple podcast interviews, which I'll link below, because you have a pretty funny story about a smoke and some guys inhaling some smoke. Could you tell my viewers that one as well?
Sure. One night, I guess, one day after lunch, who's the bravest, who's the biggest, who's the toughest badass. So I think it was Quigley and Dumas. They were 2 funny but great firefighters. Oh yeah, I can take more heat than you. Yeah. So outside on the apparatus floor, Matt, was a little room, and it had a toilet bowl. That was it. It looked like a phone booth, a little bigger than a phone booth. So they get some papers and they wrap it all up. They put it in a pail. They get some rags and they let it on fire. So they both go in there. Each one is standing on each side of the toilet. I mean, at the toilet bowl. That's how big it was. Well, this thing. So we close the door, and somebody gets a nail and a hammer, and we nail the door closed. And these 2 assholes are in there, and the smoke is coming out from the under the door, around the top, and they're pounding on the door, and we're outside. we're standing there, we're laughing our ass off. So finally, we pull it, we open the door, they come tumbling out, and now they want to kill us. They're chasing us up. We're sliding the poles. This is when we still had the poles in the firehouse. I mean, that was a pretty funny thing that these two clowns, and we nailed them in the little bathroom, and that's kind of a funny story.
That's a very funny story. I love it. Did you ever like the movie Ladder 49? Did you ever watch that?
No, I never heard of that before.
Ladder 49. It's got Joaquin Phoenix in it. It's about I don't know, almost 20 years old at this point, at least 15, I think. But it's about New York firefighters, and they do some funny hazing stuff in it.
Oh, really? Oh, no,
You,
I'm sorry. I never heard that one.
I'll send Chris a link to the trailer or something. I think it's definitely gonna make you tear up, especially, I think it hits every fighter's heart. But if you're it's New York too, so
Oh, wow. Great. Thank you, Matt.
I'll send that to you. So, um, Jerry, so you retire from New York, and you move out to Florida, and for various reasons you end up back in New York, and this is some powerful stuff we're about to get into. But you were with a lot of the men who died
Yeah.
the night before, actually, the night before September 11th. It was September 10th. I don't think people can really fathom that kind of loss.
Yeah.
If they're at a workplace and they look around and they see the people that they like, who they work with, and then to imagine, not just one of those people dying, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, Jerry, and that kind of takes your breath away.
Yeah, it does. After we brought the helmet back to the South Bronx and we did the rededication of the firehouse, and Father Judge was a dear friend of mine, and he was one of our Catholic chaplains. That actually turned out that was the last mass he ever said, because he was killed the next day, along with. So we go next door to a Dominican Republic social club, and we have food and drink and beer and all that stuff. And I guess 14 to 15 of my fellow firefighters there, Chief of Department Pete Gansey, Bill Feehan, all these men I had worked with. And the next day they're gone. 20 hours later, they're dead. It's just that probably, I'm not saying I had PTSD, Matt, but that was a hard thing to get over. Here I'm having a sandwich with a guy, and then hours later, I'm in Pittsburgh, and the towers come down, and these guys that I was just with the following morning, the morning before, and they're gone. So it's yeah, that was a very heavy thing, Matt.
So like I said, I was in second grade when it happened, but I remember it, and there's a lot of people my age who don't remember it. And so 9/11 has been something that I've really taken to study each September. Just, I don't know what it is, but it's like I feel a duty to just learn more about it. And last year I read a book. Man, I wrote it down. It was called The Fall and Rise by Mitchell Zuckoff. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I think I have, Matt.
That, to me, I loved the book. It was powerful. It was hard to read, but you just feel a duty to read it, because people my age too, I'll say this, if you're, I don't know, 30 years or younger and you weren't in New York, you have no idea what this meant, the impact of the world. And anybody younger than me doesn't know what life was like before 9/11 or before Columbine. There's a pre-Columbine world, and there's a pre-9/11 world.
Yes.
I remember as a child seeing that picture of Father Judge when they were carrying him out.
Oh, yes.
And I was I maybe at that point I was maybe 8 years old when I saw that picture, and I asked my dad what was going on, and my dad said, that guy's not alive. And that picture always was burned in my mind. And what was Father Judge like? Could you talk about him a little bit?
Sure. We had about four to six different chaplains of all different faiths, and Father Judge was a Franciscan monk, and the friary, that's what they call it, was at 31st Street. It was across from Engine 1 and I think Ladder 7. I might be off with the numbers. And he was a very spiritual man. I met him at the burn center a number of times when our firefighters were seriously burned. He was there giving last rites if it was that bad. And he responded with me to a lot of calls. If I lived on Staten Island, and if there was a bad call that I had to go on, being I was in the press office, he'd call me and he'd say, "Jerry, you're going to that multiple?" I said, "Yes, Father, I'll pick you up." And I'd stop, and he'd come out, and we'd go to the fire together. And I got to know him real well, Michael Judge. And He was loved by everybody. And again, I'm repeating myself, but who would have known that the mass he said on the apparatus 4 of ladder 42 that day was the last mass. In fact, I sent our book to the fire commissioner, Danny Nigro, who's the fire commissioner right now in New York City. And I knew him when he was a chief. Now he's the fire commissioner. And he sent me back a beautiful response. Let me see if you don't mind.
Yes, that's fine.
Matt, I don't know where. Anyway, in his letter to me, he says, Jerry, words like this, it's hard to believe 20 years have passed. And I remember Father Judge saying that last mass, and it was just those of us that were in attendance there, it was kind of hard to believe that he was taken from us. But he was a great Father Judge. He was confident to many firefighters, including myself. And that was my wonderful remembrances of him.
Yeah, it's hard, but to think about this too. Father Judge is definitely in a place now. He's in paradise. He can't be hurt. He has nothing to worry about, and that's what we always have to remember, especially with people like that. What he's got is at the moment is better than what we do. So
that's right. That's right.
Did you know Oriole Palmer at all?
I knew of him. He was a battalion chief.
Yep.
He was well thought of. I didn't personally. I met him. When you go to a fire and it's chaos, multiple alarms, and I would see on the back. I'd say, "Oh wow, that's Chief." You'd say, "Oh, that's Chief so and so." And I'd say to myself, "Gee, that's Chief Palmer." Wow, I heard a lot of good things about him. But Matt, I didn't know him personally, but his reputation was flawless. The men loved him, and he was a great teacher. I just wish I would have had the opportunity to get to know him a little better, but I didn't know him. But of course, in fact, I have. I don't know if you can't say.
I see.
This is. I brought this back from New York. This was published by the New York Times in September 26th of 2001. And this is the 300 pictures of the 343 brothers. And every night on TikTok, I try to highlight one of the men that I worked with or knew. And I knew about half of these guys and worked with. And Oriole Palmer is in here along with the other 343 guys. So a great guy.
Yeah, and everybody should follow you on TikTok as well. I believe your handle is It Started With a Helmet, correct?
Yes.
You're doing some great stuff on there, and TikTok has a younger audience. But like I said, that younger audience needs to know about September 11th, 2001. It reminds me of this book I got here, Portraits. I'm sure you've probably got a copy of this yourself. It's a pretty big book, and it's from the New York Times, and it's just the portraits of grief from everybody. It's got kind of obituary stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But when I learned about Oriole Palmer, I was like, that guy's a true badass. I mean, he made it all the way up there. I think his radio was going out at certain.
Yep. All those flaws. Oh.
They do not make them like that anymore.
No.
Every firefighter, this is what I believe. Every firefighter, regardless of if you're on a small volunteer department like I was, or if you're in New York City, everybody should know Oriole Palmer and know his story, because that's true leadership. Everything you just said. I'll be honest, Jerry, when I was on a volunteer department, a lot of the older guys, they didn't treat us very nicely. They weren't, I wouldn't go out of a way to say, necessarily mean, but they say the best thing for a younger firefighter is to think like an older one. But there's also a lot of pride with some of the guys that I was with, where I don't think they wanted the younger guys to know, because we might outdo them, physically or something, right? And I know that's not necessarily a unique problem with fire departments. And so I wanted to see if you had any advice for the old timers, but I would say this: a guy like Oriole, he wasn't like that. He was training guys up, and he led by example, and he went in first through the door. That's the kind of leader that, not that you should be, you have to be.
That's right. That's right. No, he led the example. He was a great. He was one of many. When I was in Harlem, and I met and served under wonderful chief officers, battalion chiefs, lieutenants, captains. I mean, and getting back to, I was 30 years old when I got to Harlem. I mean,
Yeah,
I was an old guy,
yeah,
and they were starting to, they thought they were going to break my chops because I was a probie. I was the first probie in 8 years in ladder 23. So they were like, oh, we got fresh meat coming here, you know? But I said to them, excuse me, I'm the next cop. You can all go, you know what they can do with it.
yeah, yeah,
So I was like, no, but and men like Oreo and Pete Gansey, the chief of the pot, all these men, they all came. We all worked in the war years. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I mean,
yeah,
it wasn't even the probie. You took the probie under your arm, under your wing. I mean, I was taught. Forget what I learned in probie school. That goes out the window like anything else.
yeah,
You went with the senior men, and they taught you. They taught you the job, and I'm so happy that I wound up in ladder 23 coming out of probie school. It took me 2.5 hours each way to get there. I lived on Staten Island, and Harlem is like, might as well say Cleveland. It's like,
yeah,
oh my God. In fact, a funny story. This is in the book, but when we got our assignments, I said, oh, gee, ladder 23 must be on 23rd Street. And they were all laughing like hell. Hey, stupid ass. You know where 23 is? I said, yeah, it's on 23rd Street. They said, yeah, your ass. It's 139th Street in Harlem. I was like, Harlem? Oh my God. Anyway, but I am so blessed that I worked with guys that are taught me the job, and I learned, it passed it on.
yeah,
So when I got some years on, I passed my knowledge on to the younger guys. And
yeah,
there was never any difference, between the senior man, although he had the respect. I mean,
yeah,
the senior man, he had the respect when he walked in. Boy, you knew he had the guts. He was it.
yeah. Yeah, there was and you've got a great story in the book as well about, meeting a higher up as a firefighter versus what that was like as a police officer.
Oh yes.
you know I wanted to ask this. I was thinking about it, and I thought about this for the first time reading your book, and so I wrote it down to ask you. The logistical side of me was wondering, on that day of September 11th, 2001, it seems like all units was at ground zero. What did they do for, I mean, people were still having heart attacks, people are still
Yeah.
living life and having emergencies. What did they do for the other calls that day and that week? Do you by chance know?
Yeah, they brought in they relocate. That's what we call relocate. In other words, from this company's busy. They're at 9/11, so
Yeah.
they brought in all companies from the fringes, from the outskirts of
Okay.
Queens, the Upper Bronx, Staten Island, to fill in where the missing companies were. Also, I think they used New Jersey companies. I believe a lot of New Jersey companies came over through the tunnel or over the George Washington Bridge, and I believe I could be wrong, but I think they put some of them in place in those firehouses, and they relocated them. So
Wow.
that they had to fill the void, just like
Yeah.
you said. They had to fill the void.
And I I know if you haven't read it yet, Fall and Rise, the story of 9/11, it seemed to me like a really great book as far as the facts of everything. You haven't read it yet, so
No.
you can't mark your stamp of approval. But this is what I would say for people like myself who, didn't weren't there in New York or don't have such a great memory of it. It does a really good job it explains the structure of 9/11. It explains why it collapsed.
Right.
It explains some of the grandfathered laws. I think they even talk about back in the day, I think a small plane had hit the Empire State Building.
Yes, during World War II.
Yeah, they talk about all of that. People who aren't from New York, who don't know the history of it, they don't understand these, some of these things, why it collapsed the way it did. They don't get it. But I think this book really explains it well because there's reasons for everything.
Sure.
The other thing I thought of while reading your book was, and I hadn't really given it serious thought until reading it, was I'm like, did the government really say that the air was safe at ground zero? How could they have possibly known that the air was safe?
Well, I'll even say her name, Christy Todd Whitman. She was President Bush's EPA chairman, commissioner, whatever you want to call her. And
Okay.
she said, yeah, oh yeah, no, the air down there has been tested and it's fine for the first responders. And I went there every day with news crews. Okay, we would go there. I'd let them go in. They do their B-roll or they'd get their shots. Very few interviews with the workers there, and I didn't wear a mask. I wasn't even told, hey, Jerry, you better take a mask. Well, in 2007, I get diagnosed with lung cancer.
Yeah.
And it took a few years for the doctors to say, oh, yeah, oh, that's right. Hey, Sanford, you were at 9/11. Yeah, no kidding. I had stopped smoking 40 years before then, a long time before then. And yeah, in fact, we're still losing people, Matt,
Yeah.
as a result of what we ingested that day. Don't forget, you had 2 tall buildings collapse with furniture, computers, humans, people, and that smell in that cloud was, I don't mean to get loud. Sometimes I get just so pissed off at maybe some lives would have been saved. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten cancer. I'm not saying that. If I had been told, hey, put this mask on before you go in there. And like I said, still people are still, every week, it's terrible. I get a notification that we've lost a first responder from 9/11. 20 years later, Matt, 20 years later, we're still dying from that crap that we all, anyway,
No, I'm glad we don't need to get into too much detail about, your battle with lung cancer. I've seen it fought in my family, and it wasn't even from somebody who smoked, right? And lung cancer I think it is considered, and it does need to be considered an active duty death. In my town, we actually had a firefighter a few years ago who had passed from that, and that's an active duty death. And your story earlier of the smoke thing, it's a funny story, but at the same time, it's sad that was the idea. The smoke eaters, they weren't thinking of the long-term effects of it. And when I resigned from my fire department, Jerry, I had actually just gotten elected on my town's city council, and I was involved in a lot of stuff volunteer wise. And I was needing to cut back on a few things, and my wife was pregnant at the time, and I was starting to learn about the cancer with firefighting and everything. And I didn't want to get booted off the department from not making calls, and so I left. But I came with this firefighting background, and then I was in the political realm, which you were as well, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, behind the scenes, I had pushed a lot for extra manpower, for certain things, and you talk to firefighters, and the problem with fire departments is, one firefighter may say that they want this jaws of life, and then another guy will tell you he wants this kind. And so it was starting to become tough to where it's like, you have to talk to the chief, because sometimes there's a little bit of, I don't want to say infighting, but guys will have different opinions on equipment and things like that. And then, behind the scenes, when you're as one individual pushing for, more manpower, it's an expense on cities. It's not just the salary. It's not just the salary, there's insurance, there's the training, there's so much to do.
All the your medical benefits, all that adds up. It's all money.
Yes. Yeah. It's a tough thing. And my city right now is currently, it's sad because they're trying to figure it out. And, it was an issue that needed to be dealt with, probably started 20 years ago.
Right.
And right now they want the whole town wants a fix like that, and it's not going to be easy. And we're not the only town going through this. This is everywhere.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and here's the other thing too. with us knowing about cancer now, there's new equipment too that fire departments need to upgrade with, and that may be hard for some people to understand, but there's new equipment that can help protect the guys as well.
Yes, there is.
You don't have to get political with this answer. You don't have to put yourself out there in any way. And if you just want to give me a yes or no, that's fine. Was Giuliani, and I'm not talking about Giuliani of the past, few years. I'm talking Giuliani, September 11th, 2001. What did you think of his leadership?
Well, when he became mayor, he replaced David Dinkins. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the city was, well, how can I say it? In disrepair. It was squeegee. You pull up to a red light. You had the homeless wiping off your windshield, all that crap. Yeah. And Mayor Giuliani came in, and let me tell you, I'll put it. You better get on the Rudy train, or he's going to run over you. Yeah. Okay. And what I'm saying is, he was an energetic but big ego, huge ego. And I worked with him for a number of years directly. I went to City Hall as much as I went to the bathroom. I mean, we were always, we called it the hall. We went to the hall all the time. And I went with the fire commissioner a lot. And Rudy was, he was his own man. I mean, you got on the train. If you didn't play, I'll tell you, I knew there would be a difference. I had a phone installed in the house. The kids called it the bat phone. And when the phone rang, I knew that a fireman was near death. And that was really, when that phone rang, I said, oh shit. I pick up the phone, and this was the first firefighter that was killed in the line of duty when Mayor Giuliani was mayor. First one. I get to the press office, and I had a light duty fireman working for me up there. His name was Al Washington, great firefighter. He was from Rescue 2. And the phone rings, and he picks up the phone, and I'm sitting next to him, and I'm at the computer, and I'm starting to write the press release announcing the death of the firefighter. And it was always started with, it is with regret, the announcement is made by Fire Commissioner so-and-so of the death. That's the standard thing.
Yeah.
Al Washington says, Jerry, it's the mayor. I said, what? Real quiet. The mayor? He goes, yeah, Giuliani's on the phone. So I pick up the phone. I said, Jerry Sanford. He said, this is Mayor Giuliani. Are you writing a press release now? I said, yes. Now, I had been up there long enough and smart enough. This wasn't my first rodeo. So I said, it was with regret that announcement is made by Mayor Rudolph Giuliani of the passing. So Rudy, already, he was putting forth who he was. He didn't come after the fire commissioner. He came before the fire commissioner. If you follow what I'm saying, Matt, it was the Rudy show. He was very demanding, but his popularity had started to fall off. And but I knew the real. I'm not going to go into any story, anything like that. I'll pass. Someday over a cup of Joe, we'll talk. But
that's fine.
It's, 9/11 kind of saved. Now he's thought of as America's mayor. But I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to comment any further than he was a tough guy to work for. I'll leave it at that. That's all.
I understand. That's totally fine. And that's if Rudy wasn't still involved in the political realm, I still would have asked you that question simply because he was the mayor of New York City, during 9/11. And so, that's you look at certain people throughout history who are in leadership roles like that. And 9/11, it's like, how does anybody, respond to that? So I don't know as much about, I've read some of his book, but I don't know as much about it.
I tell you, he stepped up at 9/11. I'll give him that much. I always give credit where credit is due. I give him that much, but I'll just leave it at that.
That's fine. Once again, the importance of being in a leadership role, no matter your flaws, your strengths, your weaknesses, you got to step up when it's time to step up, So after, I really want everybody who listens to this, to bless Jerry by going out and buying the book. It's a short read. If you get it on Kindle, it's just a few dollars. I want everybody who listens to this to read the book, and to tell somebody else about it as well. It's an interesting story.
Matt. Thank you.
9/11's coming up. It's going to be the 20-year anniversary.
Yep.
The book that I mentioned, Rise and Fall, that's a thick book. If you're not somebody who reads that much, then pick up It Started With the Helmet as well, and read through it. Now, do you have any other books besides yours? After they finish your book, do you have any other books about maybe firefighting, first responding, 9/11, anything that you would recommend people check out?
Yeah, well, actually, through TikTok, this is a bit of a story. We started a patch jackpot. Behind me, you can see the different patches, and you know how patches are, Matt, being in the job. You know, everybody has a patch and they send it in. Okay, well, I get a patch from this firefighter, a volunteer firefighter from Prince Edward Island up in Canada near Newfoundland. Yeah. And I'm teasing him. We call them Newfies. And Chris said to me, "Wait a minute, did you ever hear the book about Gander, Newfoundland?" Now, maybe a lot of your readers don't know what happened on 9/11. There's a book out. It's called The Day the World Came to Town. And over 600 airplanes. Don't forget, 9/11 happened now. And in the air are thousands of aircraft. Yeah. People don't realize, they closed all of the airports in the United States, and all the flights that were in the air were told to land. Now you had 600 transatlantic flights coming over to the United States, and they told them you had to land in Canada. And 600 flights, 38 flights landed in Gander, Newfoundland, and they took care of 6,000 passengers.
I've heard of that book. I haven't read it. Yeah, I've heard of that book.
Oh, it's The Day the World Came to Town. Now, an ironic story about this. Yesterday, Matt, I'm reading the book, and on Aer Lingus flight is a couple, Mr. and Mrs. O'Rourke. They're coming back from a family gathering in Dublin, Ireland. Yeah, they're on Aer Lingus, and the pilot they find out that in fact the trade center was attacked, and they have a son working in rescue too. And I'm on the couch. I'm like, oh my God, Kevin O'Rourke. So I'm thinking, I wonder if Kevin O'Rourke made it out, or was he working that day? Well, Chris will show you. He was working that day. In fact, he got killed. Wow. And his parents were on that Aer Lingus flight, and it's in this book. And I got goosebumps. I couldn't believe, Matt, that I'm reading about this plane with his parents on it. And I come into the office here and I said, "Oh, Chris, look at this." He was killed from Rescue 2, which is an elite rescue company, as you know. Anyway, I just started it. I would highly recommend The Day the World Came to Town. You can get it. You can buy it on. You can get it on Amazon. Yeah. And then another story is from a young girl. She's the daughter of Gary Geidel, and the name of the book is 9/11 Through the Eyes of a Daughter. Wow. Okay. And he was just weeks away from retirement, and he was in Rescue 1. And I just want to read on the back what it says here. Gary Geidel was a fireman who perished in the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. He was just weeks away from retiring from Rescue Company 1. A small town boy from Tottenville, Staten Island becomes an American hero. And it's filled with beautiful pictures all about him, his wife, and Tilly. And so I highlight this book on TikTok every night. It's a great read, and it has wonderful pictures about Gary. And I knew Gary because we did a lot of documentaries with the rescue companies, and I would ride with them, with the photojournalists with the document crew. And we did a lot of Rescue 1, 2, all of the rescue companies. But I would highly recommend this and another old book is a report from Engine Company 82. I don't know if you ever heard of that. That was written a long time ago by Dennis Smith.
Yes.
And that's like a classic. That's been around. We were in the job together. He's still alive. He's in his 80s. And one of these days, I never met Dennis over all the years we both spent in New York City. But the report from Engine 82 is another good book.
Yes, my childhood friend I was talking about earlier, he's read that book. He read that book just a few years ago. Man, I don't with that story of the guy's daughter with that book, man, it's hard for, I've got two children now, two little boys, and they're very little, and I had read the book Fall and Rise a few months after my son was born. And it hits you deeper, when you have kids, because you just start thinking about not just the firefighters, the people in the building, they're just going to work that day. The firefighters, of course, danger is always assumed with the job, but this was an act of war. It was an act of terror. It wasn't like anything, there had been terror attacks on the towers before, but this was something new entirely. And truly innocent people, and they didn't know. Same thing with the building collapsing. Everybody thought that structure was going to hold it. My understanding is there was some grandfathered in laws with the elevator shafts and the way that they had grandfathered in some coating. So how it should have been built and how it was actually built were two different things, and that's kind of what led to that collapse. That nobody thought that it was going to do that. That was a surprise to everybody, but those stories are hard to hear, especially with the people with children or the people close to retirement. Now I've seen you reference a book and I forget the name of it. But some guys I think they let you borrow it. Do you have that by you or the name of it?
Yes, I do. It's called First Do.
First Do.
And Chris, these two volunteers, Lee and TJ, they're volunteers in Aurora, Illinois. And about 3 weeks ago, she went to Chicago with her 92-year-old neighbor who she's been helping, who just lost her husband. So we went on TikTok and Chris said, I'm going to be in Chicago. If anybody wants to come, we'll speak and I'll give you a book. Well, they came. Chris gave them a copy of our book, and they lent me this book. And it's wonderful photos from 1959 to 1979. And you talk about the war years. And this was a fire buff. He actually worked for the sanitation company, sanitation department, and he would go to fires. And I'll just put up. I'm just turning the page, Matt. There's just pages and pages of fires, and this was back when I spoke earlier, where the rigs weren't covered, everything was open. There was no, this was back in where everything was good. But these were taken in the 11th Division, so I highly recommend. I think you can still get this book. It's called First Do, and it was. Well, back in the day, I think it was, let me see, it was $10.95. So I'm sure it's $10.95 for this beautiful book. In fact, I have to return it I went through it and I just marked some of the pictures. The men in the pictures were lieutenants in the pictures. Yeah. I met them when they were chief officers. 20 years later. It's just, you never know. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I know Frank. I knew him as a chief. In fact, Richie Hamilton, there's a picture here of a factory fire. He was the most decorated person in the fire department. And I worked a little bit with him when he was in Rescue One, Richie Hamilton. So I highly recommend. I'm glad you mentioned this, Matt. It's called First Do. It's all pictures. It's all pictures and a little story.
It is on Amazon. I don't remember the price. Now it might be on eBay. It might be on eBay as well. I was going to ask you to talk of any to kind of give a moment for all the charities and the things you're involved with. But first, I was going to show you something kind of funny. I was thinking about this for my first year of service. Now, I was actually 3 years into the department at this point, but they had a program where we could join as high school kids, and they didn't count those years as being an actual fireman. So my first year in, I got this bobblehead.
Oh, wow.
And they misspelled my name, I think on accident. But if that doesn't go to show what it's like being a new firefighter, you get a bobblehead and your name misspelled, right? So, well, yeah, Jerry, tell us about some charities that you recommend if people want to help out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have them listed in the back of the book, but I every Saturday we about 8 or 10 of us, we started a charity, an organization where we welcome in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam veterans. It's called Homer's Helter. He had a military museum here in Naples, and he passed away. And these veterans would go to his museum for coffee and donuts and BS every day. And he passed away. His wife couldn't continue to run it. So we picked up the chase, and we meet every Saturday. And it's called, let me find it here, Gulf Coast, www.gulfcoastvfveteransandfriends.org. And and that would be, we got a small grant last year. In fact, we just got back together again because of the COVID. We had closed for about a year and a half, Matt, because we couldn't bring in these old timers to sit on top of each other, because that's how they are. They just come and they talk about the days they spent in Vietnam and Korea. And World War II, we're really losing them because there's not too many more that are around, Yes. So that's one of the, I really have about, wow, I didn't realize I have 7. I belong to 7 different organizations.
That's all right. Read them all. And I'll link them all too.
Freedom Memorial Foundation of Naples. Back in 2002, I got a call from one of the commissioners at Collier County, and he said to me something like this: "Hey, are you the New York guy?" I said, "What are you talking? Who is this?" He said, "This is Fred Coyle. I'm one of the commissioners." I said, "Okay, Commissioner, what do you need?" He said, "Well, we want to build a Freedom Memorial here to remember everybody that was killed last year." This was like a couple of years after 9/11. So I joined the committee, and it took us all these years, and we finally dedicated, and now you can see this, but that's the Freedom Memorial.
Yep.
It's in the back of the book. And I don't know how I did this. I raised $1,900,000, Matt. I can't even tell you how I did that. I was just a firefighter. What did I know about raising? We went to car washes. We went to car shows. We went to swamp buggy races. We held all kinds of golf tournaments. And that is my pride and joy and every time I go there, like over the years, we had a hard time when the economy took a tank, and people out on Golden Gate Parkway, where it's situated, it was surrounded by a chain link fence. It was this ugly looking gray thing. And I'd get a call, "When are you going to rip that eyesore down?" And it's a disgrace. And I hung in there, Matt, believe me. I'd go down there and I'd hold my hands on the screen, on the fence. And I'd say, "Brothers, I'm not going to give up on you." And I didn't. I hung in there. And with a lot of help, we raised, in one night in the parking lot, I raised $1,300,000. From the people that came there that pledged. And I got, in fact, the county said to me, "How much do you think you're going to raise at your dinner?" You're having a dinner in a parking lot? I said, "Yeah, we're having it in the parking lot." We're charging $250 and $500 a seat. They said, "Well, who's coming?" I said, "I don't know." They said, "Okay, boy, you got some nerve. You got some." I tell you what, if you raise 600,000, over 600,000, we'll match it. This was the county. Can you imagine the county? Your county saying, "We'll match you, Matt. You want to build a new firehouse?" I mean, that's it. Forget it.
No.
Well, I raised $631,000 from the people in the parking lot. We had a big tent, steak dinner, the whole 9 yards, wine. It was really a 5-star event. I mean, you're paying $250 or $500. You better give them a good product, you know?
Yeah.
And anyway, I raised $1,300,000, and we finished the project, and it was dedicated in 2016, which was the 15th anniversary of 9/11. And now the 20th year, and we're almost finished. We just have 21 remaining round discs with the state's name on them, and they each cost $1,600. So we're about 20 short. So once we get the money for that, and that you can look at the www.freedommemorialfoundationofnaples.org. Okay. And that's another one of my big charities. And Wounded Warriors of Collier County. We have these returning young men and women that are overseas, have been fighting in Afghanistan and Iran, and come home with PTSD. And again, I have that in the back of my book, www.woundedwarriorsofcollier, Collier, county.com. And this afternoon, I'm going up to Bonita Springs. I work in a food pantry. I volunteer in a food pantry. Yeah. And that's www.bonitaassistant.org. And then finally, I don't know if you've heard about Wreaths across America. No. Every Christmas, this program, Matt, started in Maine, a company that makes Christmas wreaths. And they have been around now 10 years, and I've been involved with them since they started. They place wreaths on every grave of the veterans in cemeteries all over the country, including Arlington National Cemetery. And our memorial here has been, even though it's not a cemetery, it's been designated as a honorable spot. So they send me down about 12 wreaths, and I have a ceremony in December, and I get somebody, a veteran from each branch of the service, and we display it in front of the memorial. And that's www.wreathsacrossamerica.org. So Matt, that's great that you asked me for these charities. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. We'll and that's the other thing people need to know about you, Jerry. You were in the Navy. So...
I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy before in 1956 to 1962. Yep. And very nice. I'm an old swabby, and I love those years, and I didn't get to see much of the world, but it was good duty. Good duty.
Jerry, my grandpa was in the Navy, and while he was on a ship once, he got a I don't know if it was on the ship, but while he was in the Navy, he got a tattoo on his forearm, and it was of a donkey, and he said it was to always remind himself not to be an ass. My grandma said it never worked. So,
Grandma.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
like great. I said earlier, man. First of all, for everybody listening, please bless this man. Give a little bit to the charities. Give what you can. Get It Started With the Helmet. You know, you can read it on your phone. You can get it on Kindle. You can read it for just a few dollars. You know, give your respects. You know, as we come up to the 20th anniversary of 9/11, this changed the world. And you know, let's remember the firefighters. You know, they had nothing to do with anything going on politically. They were just the guys that showed up wanting to help. So let's give a little bit back, give to those charities, check out the book. Let's bless Jerry. Well, Jerry, we'll sign off for the listeners, but I want to stay on the line with you for just a minute. But everybody should know everything that we talked about today will be linked, so they can check out the books we mentioned, the charities, and everything. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, folks. Thank you. God bless you all. Stay safe and be nice to each other.
Yes. Be nice to each other. All right.
Again, thank you for listening to the Book Brilliant podcast. I can't thank Jerry and Chris enough for setting the time aside to talk with me and for being patient through our difficulties with the technology. But man, it was a great interview, and it really made my day. Please follow Jerry on all social media. He's on TikTok under It Started With a Helmet. And I really like that because there's a young audience on TikTok, and they need to see people like Jerry. Jerry's a hero, you know, and he has something that he can teach younger people, you know, about firefighting, about being a first responder, about 9/11. People don't realize that there was a totally different world pre 9/11. And I think that him being on TikTok is great. And him honoring all of the fallen brothers, all the fallen firefighters that day, that's a great thing for a guy to do on TikTok. So Jerry, Chris, thank you for the work that you're putting in there. And please, please bless this man. The book is just a few dollars if you get it on Kindle. I think it's less than $10 on Amazon anyway, right? If you get a physical copy of the book. So please check that out. At the moment, they're doing a kind of a patch giveaway, which the details on that are on their social media. So you can check that as well. But thank you for listening. And again, if you like what you're hearing so far on the Book Brilliant podcast, there's a couple different ways you can support us. You can rate and review us on iTunes. You can donate on our website, and you can like and follow on all of our social medias, which are linked in the show notes. Thank you for your time. I hope you like this one as much as I did, because it really did make my day to talk to Jerry. It put me in a good mood. I had a good rest of the day. So thank you, Jerry.